Hey there, Medhy here, and you are watching or listening What the FinTech. What the FinTech is a news and information platform covering the latest FinTech development in Asia. Recently, I changed the format of these interviews to have a more engaging conversation with FinTech entrepreneurs in Asia to discuss about entrepreneurships, customer engagement, emerging technologies, and partnerships. These interviews are available on the video and podcast platforms. Please subscribe to support this channel and enjoy this interview with Jessica. Hi, Jessica.
Hi, Medhy.
How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for coming today.
Oh, my pleasure.
For everyone who knows you in Hong Kong, you are co-chair of the Fintech Association, co-founder
Yes.
of Planto. But for the people that don't know you, could you describe yourself, introduce yourself, what you are doing?
Yep, sure. So, hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm Jessica, as Medhy mentioned, and I'm one of the founding members of Planto, also the co-chair of FTHK. About me, Planto is a fintech company in Hong Kong that is serving kind of the B2C as well as the B2B space. And we'll probably delve a bit more around that in our discussions later. But about myself, I'm originally from Taiwan. I actually grew up, well, I was born in Singapore, grew up in the UK, and also came into Hong Kong, study university, and started business here. And for me, aside from in the fintech space, I'm also a huge advocate for women representation, and especially in the startup space. So I'm very active in what we call She Loves Tech, as well as Women in Tech, and a huge fan of anime and manga.
Yeah, we discussed about this before this interview for a long time.
Yeah.
So, in how many countries did you live in your life?
Yes. I lived in different places. So there is Singapore. Lived in London for 6 years, Taiwan for 2 years, even though family's from there. But actually, that's the shortest period I've lived in all the places I've been. And Hong Kong's been longest, around 15 years. So been to a couple of places. Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Before we start the deep dive to your company and what you are doing recently, could you describe what makes you nervous today?
Yeah, I think you've made it really comfortable for me, so a lot less nervous than I usually will be. But I guess one of the things I'm more nervous today is about whether or not the audience will be able to learn something from my sharing today. I think things, podcasts or even panels, I see it as a very similar thing where I hope that the audience is able to get something out from it and just say, "Oh, I've learned something new." And yeah, I think that's what
So, you
nervous
want
about.
to inspire the audience here, right?
Yes.
And what inspires you?
Well, I think what really inspires me and motivates me to do what I do is the idea of we have limited time.
Mhm.
In general, I think one of my favorite, quotes, I guess, or articles was from Sam Altman, who says that the days are long, but the decades are short. And that's why it's very important, with the limited time you have, is to be the best of yourself, which for me is to be happy and do things that makes me happy.
Oh, I didn't know this one. There is a couple of sentences I like from different, great men, but
Yeah, yeah,
this one is very
exactly.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so you're an entrepreneur, and most of the time, entrepreneurs have a turning point in their life. So, what is your turning point?
Definitely when I started with my co-founders and founding team started Planto. That is a huge turning point. For me personally, I've changed so much, realized about things I didn't realize about myself before, changed the way that people perceive me, and I think more importantly, it gave me a lot more direction in life. We're here to solve problems for and customers for banks, and it's a lot more meaningful. And also, I've been able to explore things that I never thought was something I was passionate about. For example, helping or being part of a community which encourages more females to go into entrepreneurship as well, which is something that we still see is lacking in
Mhm.
general.
Interesting. Um, what is the favorite thing about what you do right now?
Well, I think it's just generally every day I just learn something new. It's not a repetitive cycle. Every day is a bit different. The clients we meet is different. How we operate the business is different. And we get to meet people like you, and people from the FinTech Association. And I just love being able to, challenge myself as well. And that's what I think. That's the key to what I love. What I do.
Um, could you introduce what is Planto exactly and how people can reach out to your platforms or apps if you have one?
Sure. So Planto, we actually operate kind of two main channels, or main businesses. One is our B2C app. So it's an application where a user can manage their finances, aggregate all of their finances from different financial institutions. So it's not just say banks; it's also your MPF accounts, your investment accounts, and as well as, let's say, your insurance. And then through that, we call ourselves like a personal finance assistant. We guide users based on this data, on their in like kind of financials, and then tell them, how do you achieve a certain goal? What kind of properties you can buy in a few years, and then just be there to actually guide them towards their different milestones in life. And the other one is, using our experience in building such an app. We've gained some traction in the past few years, and banks have started, since 2020 with the emergence of virtual banks and COVID. We've started to work with different banks on their own digital initiatives to increase engagement, to increase acquisition, as well as digital cross selling. And so for users who want to use our app, very simple. You can go on App Store, Play Store, type Planto, and we should be right there, and you can download.
If I download the application, could you just walk through the
Sure.
different steps there?
Yeah. So before we do anything on the app, we actually ask you, what do you actually want to achieve? So we would ask you, exactly why is the reason you want to manage your finances. And after that, we would guide users to kind of link up their accounts so that they can see all of their finances in one place, 360 view. And once they get this 360 view, it's not just on account level, but also on, like, say, transaction level. You'll know, where have I been spending, which merchant, how do I set a budget? Are there any kind of duplicate subscriptions that I can be canceling? When is my due date for my credit card? These kind of different alerts that you'll get on your finances, and your, obviously, your annual fees as well. And users can essentially set actual goals. So one of our most popular features is actually our property goal, where a user just needs to input their profile. They choose where they actually want to buy a property. So, for example, I want to buy one in Wan Chai,
Mhm.
and then based on your finances, your savings, we project when can you buy a specific property in Wan Chai. Yeah, and then you can plan towards that and track towards that as well.
When you start, did you face any challenges?
Yes. For me personally, I think the biggest challenge is the mindset change. I was previously in finance, so I was in banking and an investment firm. And, one of the things that I had to adjust to is the fact that I had to be open to, let's say, experimenting. I had to be open to being comfortable that sometimes what you plan out will fail. But failure is not a bad thing. You learn from that too. And it's through failure that you can improve your products as well. So that was a bit of an adjustment for me, because when you're in finance or in banking, everything is very structured. And to some extent, you had to be somewhat of a perfectionist. So I'll give you an example. For even like PPT decks, you had to make sure the formatting was right. If the formatting wasn't right, it's like the end of the world as well, from the partners or something. So, but the fact is that, going into a startup, what's important is being able to focus on things that are most important, that aren't trivial, and that makes the most impact.
So when you face challenges, sorry, when you face challenges, you have to have the motivations to keep going, right? What was your motivation at the time?
Well, my key motivation was, it's just, I don't think there's anything else I would want to do instead. I mean, obviously, there's always challenges for startups, and founders. But, when I'm stressed out, I just take a nap and then wake up again, tell myself that I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. I wouldn't want to be working on anything else. And yeah, it just makes me keep going. And also, I have a really amazing team, and not every startup gets to have that kind of opportunity to have a great team to work with, and so shouldn't take that for
Oh,
granted.
so you go for my next question. What makes a green team?
I think, I mean, obviously, for every company, it's a bit different because it depends on the nature of your business. But I think for Planto, what was just great about us is that it's a very balanced team. We had the founding team had the kind of general skill set you needed for a company to work well. You have people who's great at technology, We have a great CEO on Kit. We have great marketing and finance people who helped with the fundraising process as well. But I think another thing that is super important is just trust
Mhm.
between the team, so that you don't micromanage, that you just let the team work on what they believe will work. And trust is very important, and it's not something that's easy to actually to gain. But I think that is also super important as well.
How big is your team right now?
We're around 10 people, so it's still a very small team.
And based in Hong Kong only, or also a bit internationally?
Oh, so actually, all of us were in Hong Kong before, but some of our kind of founding members went back to their respective countries for a temporary period. So I have like co-founders in Philippines, in Thailand, as well as Canada. But fundamentally, we're actually based in Hong Kong.
And your market is Hong Kong only, or you have also other markets?
So we actually, so in Hong Kong is our core main market, but we actually also went into Taiwan, and we're also exploring Southeast Asia. And mainly is because obviously there's this opportunity, and there's been banks from there that has approached us during COVID. But also, yeah, as I mentioned, some of our founding team is from Southeast Asia as well, so it makes a lot of sense for us to try and explore that market as well.
Um, I know that your company has a base of followers and customers. Could you share who are they, and
Sure.
do you have some data about them?
Yep, sure. So for our user base, for example, Planto, for the B2C app, we actually service around 500,000 um, users per month. And this 500,000 includes, let's say, app users as well as people who go into our blogs. So we have a huge like ecosystem around personal finance. So we have a lot of people reading our blogs around personal finance management. How do I buy a property? What kind of products are out there in the market? That's great. In terms of our B2B, we work with over 10 banks right now
Mhm.
on different types of initiatives. And yeah, and I think, I think that's where, we kind of have a balance of both corporate and also and customer followers. Yeah.
So we spoke about the origin story of you and Planto, but what makes you excited about the coming years?
It's definitely you feel that there is this push in Hong Kong around the adoption of fintech, and I think you're the expert at this, but you see in Hong Kong HKMA is pushing like fintech 2025. You have open banking and obviously CDI as well, and then stuff around regtech and ESG. So it's very exciting to see that banks are getting more proactive about it. So we're looking forward to seeing that transformation. But I think also for us personally, we're looking forward to exploring other markets as well.
Interesting. You spoke about HKMA pushing for FinTech 2025 CDI with what is the acronym for CDI?
Oh,
Commercial data
interchange.
intentions, right?
Yes, yeah.
So if we just focus on the market in Hong Kong, can you share with us some of the trends happening here?
Sure. So I think that was kind of a high level kind of stuff that I mentioned before, but too specific. So I think where I'm coming from is what we've been engaging our banking clients, or what our banking clients told us what they wanted is we're seeing a lot of trend around you have open banking, and you have a lot of banks wanting to leverage and to see if they can prepare for open banking. So the idea of PFM, which DBS is great at, is becoming very important. A few months ago, also HSBC pushed like PFM features on their app as well, which got a lot of the banks kind of talking to us and telling us and sharing our insights in this area. So personal finance management is the trend we're seeing for the retail side. But actually, we also work with commercial banks, SME banks, and for that, you're starting to see in conjunction with CDI is around SME lending, and how do we make SME lending? How do we give more access uh, to loans to SMEs or MSMEs, and we're seeing them exploring different things like even business financial management. How do you get access to alternative data through a seamless kind of user experience through accounting and bookkeeping support? So that's kind of where we're seeing, and obviously it's the ESG element where banks are looking into seeing how they can help their customers essentially track their carbon footprint as well.
ESG is a big topic in Hong Kong.
Yes, super big right
How,
now.
how do you support your customer with ESG?
Yeah, so actually, we just released this, but it's been in beta for a while. But we're working with an amazing fintech company from New Zealand called Kogo, and they work with a couple of banks and startups in Europe as well. We're actually helping our users track their carbon footprint based on their transactions, and we're now also offering kind of similar support and solutions to banks as well to help them actually kind of do the same on their platform, so that the users can build the awareness around how much carbon footprint they have, and then get advice on how to reduce that.
Um, your company looks like a lot of companies in Europe.
Mm.
I can think about Plaid or Tink. It looks more similar to Tink, if
Mm.
I'm not mistaken. Do you face some of the startups coming here and be your challengers? Are they trying to come in Asia? And if yes, how do you compete with them?
Yeah, I think you definitely do see some players here that are like originally from Europe, but they don't have the similar strategy as us, where their play is basically they have that similar technology, and whoever wants to use it can then just kind of license it from them. But for us, it's always about that play of working directly with banks. Or building an app ourselves to service the local market, so it's a bit of a different approach because we've had competitors actually from Hong Kong as well that do similar things. I mean, they're amazing at it too. But I think our competitive advantage was we built everything in house, whereas maybe some like our competitors or similar kind of companies, they actually get it from third parties, which is kind of like what you mentioned, the companies from Europe who have that same technology. So we have that kind of competitive advantage of having being A, familiar with the market, and B, having built everything in-house.
I see. Yeah, definitely. It's interesting. You spoke a bit about data before and how you collaborate with banks, but how do you support those banks with the data-driven strategies that you created in-house?
Sure. So I mean, I guess our value proposition has been, a acquisition, engagement, and also digital sales for banks. So we use that. Obviously, you can't never do that unless you utilize the data that you have, and we do that. So there's three different things we're doing. So I mean, one, engagement obviously is we're using data to help banks to build more engaging journeys for their customers. So how do you use data to understand more about what you should be alerting your customers, what kind of content they should be getting, what kind of alerts or warnings or insights they should be getting. And that's all based on data. And the second thing is what we call value added engine, which is something we're actually working on right now, is how do you use data to build lookalike models for your customers. So how do I actually identify existing kind of pool of customers who don't have a product with me or don't have a loan, but using this lookalike model, how do I identify, um, you know, the propensity of that customer taking up a loan? So that's what we're working on with a bank right now. And it's really interesting because we're actually seeing a lot of results in this area. I mean, it applies to across all the funnel, um, and uh, and then last is obviously around again the sustainability part of things, where we are looking into helping banks essentially utilize transaction data to help their customers track their carbon footprint.
So yes, working with local merchants, having partnerships here locally, and being data-driven is very important for banks at this moment. That's what we call ecosystems for banks most of
Yeah,
the time, and it's
exactly.
where we look at partners when we collaborate with a company like yours.
Yeah.
Um, this is a very timely, I want to say.
Mm.
Um, we spoke about the business, your growth, the two parts, B2C and B2B. Could you share with us what made you successful at the beginning? It was a features, it was an opportunity on your app, it was an option that you got, or could you share a bit more with us?
Sure. I think what really made us successful in the beginning uh, is actually we were solving a huge problem in the market. And because we were solving that, it just became it became evident, really, not even without a user using our app, just having a wait list there telling them we're trying to solve this problem, which is helping them aggregate their finances and getting insights on them, is already what made us kind of stand out. And we also stood out because, obviously there were also other players in the market, but we actually covered a lot of different institutions, which means our coverage, our user base can also be hugely increased as well. So I think that was really the key to what was made us successful. And obviously, it's the idea of focusing on key metrics, like how do we keep users engaged, but not looking at it from a product perspective, but looking at it from a customer's needs perspective. What do they actually need that also makes them come back to the app constantly? And that's kind of that mindset was very important.
I went to your Apple app and I saw that you are rated with a 4.4 stars and you have like a 1.8K ratings. So how do you create engagement there, and how you just mentioned about having the stickiness of the customers
Mm.
coming back to the application. So how do you create this?
Yeah. So yeah, good question. So actually, I guess the nature of the product itself, because it's so personal to a user, that naturally it becomes something of a huge opportunity for users to come back constantly, because we all care about our finances. We all want to know what's happening. But I think one thing that, but we obviously will always want to push for more. So we also, what we always focus on is actually identifying or speaking to our customers. So as an example, we've spoken to more than, like, let's say, I would say more than 500 customers, just to understand what their pain point is and what they actually need. And during our product development process, we constantly did that. So we would ask, what are we still missing? And at this point, I mean, to some extent, we still do. I mean, we're seeing that customers want to get into, want us to link their crypto accounts, and that becomes something that, okay, yeah, that's pretty interesting. And then we just constantly do that. And another thing that we keep customers engaged, and why we can make it easy for us to keep customers engaged, is the fact that we have something called live chat. Usually, a lot of fintech players, their apps, you have to email them when you have a problem. But for live chat, the customer is like WhatsApping you directly, so we can have this like fluid conversation with customers. We help them solve their problems ASAP. But at the same time, they give us that feedback we need to learn more about how to make the app better as well.
Interesting. We saw the strategy on B2C. If we speak a bit more of B2B, what are the different challenge and obstacles you got with traditional banking when it comes to innovation and partnership with them, and how do you solve them?
Yeah, so I think one of the kind of I guess when it comes down to the challenges of traditional banks. I mean traditional banks, you have a lot of people like who are really driven to make change, but it's really difficult because you have, I think, most people will know the idea of legacy systems. It's very tough for banks to essentially transform as fast as a startup, because you have systems that are very difficult that you need to have time to migrate. But I think another thing that I wouldn't say it's a challenge, but I think something that we've learned about banks is, not all, but ones we've been exposed to anyway, is that there is still room to be more customer centric. I mean, obviously, all banks say that they try to be more personalized and customer centric, but we see that when it comes down to building digital products, the strategies and the approach is always around, how do we sell this product, instead of what do our customers need. And when they're trying to do market research, it's always about competitor analysis, which is important, but it's rarely ever about, I want to go out and speak to a customer to actually get a feel about what are they actually feeling, and getting that conviction of what is the right solution. And I think that is kind of a key, kind of the key kind of uh, challenges. But also there's other things like you know how banks sometimes solve problems. So, when we come to the development process, sometimes they think in order to solve a problem, you just get more developers. You get more developers in, and it will be done fast. But actually, the velocity, you would realize, is actually not fast at all. Like, because you have so many people involved, it gets very bureaucratic, very complicated, and it slows things down as well. And we try to come in as not only a solutions provider, but giving advice and actually give consultation as well on how they can improve on that.
What is your structural advantages here, and what do you that you hold for sorry, what structural advantages does your company do and hold?
Right. Okay. So obviously, like most startups, we're very flat. And in that sense, because we're very flat, all of the members or founding members, at least who lead different projects, they have had exposure to different funnels. So I may be product and BD, but actually I had a bit of exposure with our tech team. Our marketing head, for example, knows about our user discovery processes, product development processes too. So our mindset there is very different, where we actually look at problems from different direction, not just one direction. And so when we go in and then speak to like a banking customer, we're able to see things not in silo, but in a larger overview, where we'll tell you that how does this affect your entire funnel, and what is the approach that you should be focusing on to actually achieve your end goal, instead of just focusing in silo. Let's say just the marketing team or just the tech team, you know, because you have to think about the overall benefit to the bank as well.
You spoke about your collaboration with banks. You spoke about increasing the customer experience for banks as well. So if a big bank is listening to you and want to reach out to you, how do you collaborate with them? How do you increase their ecosystem reach? How do you increase the customer experience for them?
Yep. So I think it comes down to two things actually. One is obviously, we do that via our core B2B solution. So again, it's about data as well, which we touched upon before too, and also open banking. APIs. We can help them. Increase the customer reach not only through, let's say, our solutions, but they can leverage on our application to actually learn more on how to uh, you know, get personalized or get exposure to more of their customers. Because one thing that we're also kind of exploring and thinking about is also the idea of banking as a service as well. So how do banks essentially reach out to more customers, not directly in the current just from directly their current app, but actually utilizing some fintechs out there or TSPs out there to actually increase the pie for them.
To what extent is the consumers actually a constraint on improving digital services?
I think actually that consumers aren't really a constraint. I think when you look at adoption of services, consumers naturally consumers don't want to have too much, like, let's say, barriers in using the services, right? So I think it's really should be kind of the fintechs or the bank's responsibility to make the digital experience as seamless for the user as possible, or at least make them feel comfortable. Obviously, there are older generations who are concerned about security, but how do you address that? I think that is very important as well. I mean, if you look at the case of Binance, they kind of knew they have two types of like apps. There's I think the one that's more basic, which is more user friendly, and then another one is more kind of for experts. They understand that they can't just force customers to use their expert version. They need to adjust to what their customers' behavior is as well.
You share a lot about what uh, big banks, insurance, or financial institutions can learn from you. But do you have a bit more to share with us on these points without repeating yourself from previously? Because
Yeah.
you obviously share a lot of knowledge already.
Yeah. I think fundamentally it's about not being afraid to take calculated risks. I think there is, I mean, obviously DBS, and also HSBC, they have this kind of teams who are working on innovation that is willing to work on projects that are slightly more risky for a bank. Um, but I think more banks should be like, let's say, more traditional banks should start, following suit, to understand that, you can be innovative, and that you shouldn't let things like regulations and compliance stop you to think outside of the box. I think compliance and regulation, it will start evolving as the market evolves as well. So it's just all about like being able to step outside, focus on what the customer needs, work towards what the customer needs, testing it within, let's say, even your staff first, and then see the impact, and then just do it fast.
You spoke a bit about Open API Phase 3 and Phase 4 just before. So Phase 3 will be soon released for Hong Kong. What it will change for you and for your company?
Yeah, so actually, I think it will drastically change. I think for us, where an application which initially aggregates a user's finances, and to be able to do that over APIs would be the best thing for us, because we're able to essentially, um, make it secure and more accurate for the user when it comes down to aggregating the data and accounts into one place. So no, that's definitely like something that will impact us. But at the same time, I think it will also increase the collaboration opportunity between us and banks as well. As I mentioned before, open APIs could pave way to different services like banking as a service, and improve overall for an customer on how they actually manage their finances in general.
Could you share a bit more about yourself and your impact on the what the on a woman in tech?
Yeah. She
She
loves
she
tech.
loves techs
Yeah.
and a few other things. What inspired you to go there? What
Yeah.
do you do exactly for them?
So actually, my first like the first thing I kind of got involved with was actually Startup Weekend, Women Independence Day edition. And before I wasn't very aware of this kind of uh, kind of situations and stuff. But when I went in, it just made me feel that there is a lot of issues or challenges that women face in general, after talking to a lot, because the purpose of that event was to find problems that females face, and then you just learn so much from that. And then once I started Planto with my team, then I entered like in a competition called She Loves Tech. And it's a global competition that essentially focuses on female founders or products that are around solving female problems. And I just love the community so much, and just everyone was sharing some of the challenges they faced, and some I actually kind of feel as well. I kind of connect with, and so I just wanted to push for that. And now currently involved in since we actually won the Hong Kong round back in 2019, and
Congrats.
thank you. And ever since then, I've been very involved and volunteering to get more kind of female founders involved in Hong Kong. And yeah, I mean, it's an amazing experience.
You're also the co-chair of the digital banking of the Fintech
Yes.
Association of Hong Kong.
Yep.
Could you share with us what you are doing exactly there? What is the role of the Fintech Association and especially your committee?
Yeah. So FinTech Association is just, it's the center of, let's say, everything fintech in Hong Kong. It's advocating fintechs and the application of fintech technology, and essentially, promoting talents in this industry as well. And what I am doing is I am the co-chair, and you're on the board. I'm a co-chair of the Digital Banking and Payments Committee. And what I essentially do is I'm very much in charge, with serving our members and engaging them into everything that is related to digital banking and payments. Holding events, or gathering, working interest groups that wants to be involved in, let's say, conversations we have with the government, for example, on open banking or on EHKD. So it's all very exciting, and it's just you get to being part of that, being a member or being a core group or being a co-chair. You're just very active in knowing what's happening and having that kind of influence as well, in kind of giving feedback into that community or into, let's say, the government level as well.
Do you have any piece of advice for the listener of this show?
I think my advice would be, if you are a someone looking into entrepreneurship, just do it. I mean, obviously, you have to plan it well, but I think it's never. If you have an idea, there's always something that you can do on the side first, test it out, and see what's happening instead of letting it linger in your head. And for banks, I would say, again, touching on point to a few questions before, is around just focus on innovation. Don't focus too much. Obviously, compliance and regulation is very important, but it's about having that balance of identifying how you're going to solve a problem, and then seeing how you can work around regulations and compliance as well.
What is the biggest takeaway you would like everyone to take from this interview?
I think I just hope that in general, the takeaway is there is something that has been like helpful for your listeners. and I think that already makes me happy.
There's any question you would like me to ask you?
um, oh, this is a hard one. Uh, I think you've already covered like the questions that I'm very much comfortable with asking, but you can give me a surprise too if you have any other ones.
No, but where our listener can find you and contact you?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you want to contact me, then happy to email me, I guess, at jessica at planto.io. But yeah, I mean, I'm also, one of the co-chairs of Fintech Association. So you can get involved in Fintech Association and happy to connect through there as well.
Interesting. And the FinTech Association is very interesting.
Yeah,
So
super. Yeah.
you have to go because there is an event almost every day or like meetings from the different committees
Yes. You have
regularly.
it's just I've learned so much from the association. Like you get to get touch upon different aspects of fintech in Hong Kong. So
Where can the listener sign up for your courses or purchase your product?
yep. So listeners can go on to App Store or Play Store and type in Planto, Planto, if you're in Hong Kong, and you can just use the app, and it's free for 3 months. So you can get a play around with it and then see if it's something that you need.
Thank you very much, Jessica.
Thank you so much, Medhy.
It was a pleasure to have you. And thank you for everyone's listening this podcast or watching this video. You can support us by subscribing, liking, commenting, or give us 5 stars rating on the podcast platforms such as Spotify or Apple Podcast. Thank you very much.
Thank
And next
you.
interview will be next week. See you. Bye bye.
See you. Don't forget to subscribe.